ATS systems they're using ATS systems to filter and sort out applicants. And one of the things that we talked about is the idea that you want to apply for jobs for which you are qualified. You want to be able to get to a score where you have the necessary skills to complete the job, but you also have the necessary skills to get the job. And you want to be able to sell yourself, showing that you have all of those skills. But invariably, there will be gaps in your experience. There'll be things that you did that were similar to, but not identical to what they're looking for. Now, the good news is when you're applying for a job and you're using some job search function like Indeed or LinkedIn jobs or whatever to find a job, the great news is somebody at that company has spent time, resources, energy, and technology to tell you exactly what they're looking for. So they have now gone out and written a job description to describe what it is they want. And then your job is to convince a robot, the ATS system, that you meet those qualifications. So the first thing to note is that by and large, when you're doing a modern job search, right, uh, 75% of resumes are rejected before a human ever sees them. This is the problem that most of you have when you're applying for a job. And that is that you find a job, you think you're qualified for the job, you spend your time and energy submitting the application, sending your resume in, and you get either an immediate rejection or more commonly, you don't hear anything from anybody. And that is because your application has been rejected by the ATS system and it never got to a human being. So 75% of all applications are rejected. Now, one of the things we find, like when we applied to go to college, we would fill out maybe 3 or 4 college applications. Maybe if you were industrious and your parents pushed you really hard, you would pick out 6 or 7 colleges. And what's going on in the college application process now is because it's done online and because it's an automated process, kids today may apply to 15, 20, 30 different colleges and universities, which means the number of applications to go to college has gone way up and the acceptance rate has gone down. Why? Because so many more people are applying to so many different colleges. The same thing is true with job applications. Because they are done online, and many people do what is called spray and pray. They write a resume, they send it out to every job that meets that, something that's close to what they're looking for in any jurisdiction. The number of job applications has gone up. So for a job doing project management, and the other reason why that's happened is a lot more jobs can be done remotely. So while in the past you were competing against a labor force of other people in Howard County or other people in the DC area, you now may be competing with people anywhere in the country, and indeed for some jobs anywhere in the world. So the pool of applicants applying for the jobs is much higher. The uh, the barrier to applying is much lower. It's easier to apply to multiple places. And so the number of job applications has gone way up. What that means is the acceptance rates go way down. So you're not just competing for the job and convincing the person reviewing you that you are the right person for the job. You are competing against everybody else who is applying for that job. So that's what your goal is to be part of that 20 to 25% that a human will look at the resume. That's the good news. The second thing is when a human does look at the resume, they take about 6 seconds to look at the resume to say, is this a person that I want? So they are not selecting someone, they are deselecting it. And what they're going to look at first is not just your name, they're going to look at the summary. Who or what is this person? So you need to put your qualifications and the fact that you are qualified for this job right up there in the summary. Right. The other thing is
Mark,
98.
excuse me.
Yes.
Some people are
Yes.
asking if you can make your picture smaller and make the slides larger. They're having
That's a
problems.
very good question. I will.
If not, you're on the screen, so you can, if you want to just
Did
enlarge
that do it?
the,
Did that help?
no,
All
no,
right.
because you're still. what's happening is your picture is half the size. So you can,
Yeah. I,
if you want to take
I
your,
would.
Maybe
because
Jessica
you're
can help.
wait, much better.
That
Now
did
just
it.
take, that
Okay.
did it. And now
Yep.
if you can just,
Yep. Now share.
Yes, I know.
okay,
Okay.
they're all thumbs up.
All right.
And then if you want to take off the side view and just have
I
your,
think I did that.
no, it's still there.
Uh,
No, I
technology.
could. He can. It's large. Oh, you're talking
Okay.
about making a slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just go ahead. It's fine.
I'll
This
just
is
go
still
through
better.
this.
It's much
Okay.
better.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So, so the trick here is that you want to defeat the ATS systems and you want to use AI. Now, one of the questions that Jerry was asked is, should I use AI to write my resume? And the answer to that is yes and no. You're not going to use AI to write your resume. You are going to use AI to help craft parts of your resume and to make sure your resume puts the right you for each job you're applying for. So you should not have a resume. You're going to end up with multiple resumes for different types of jobs, and then individual resumes for each job you're applying for. Now, look, that's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. It's much easier to just email off a resume or just upload a resume and say, I am done with this. But you're applying for a job. And if you apply for 40 jobs and get none of them, all the time that you worked on that is wasted. If you apply for 6 jobs and get 4 interviews, it's a much better use of your time. So we're going to talk about what ATS systems are and how they work, how ATS systems parse and score your resume, how to build a modern resume, how to translate skills like from government jobs to private sector, from military jobs to private sector, what you do about gaps, missing skills, certifications, looking at some of the platforms that are used and some of the tools that you use to generate the resume. So typically, an ATS system does more than just filter out resumes. What an ATS system is, it'll take an application, which will include a resume and sometimes a cover letter. Some places let you submit a cover letter. And it will then parse that resume. It'll take it apart and fill it into a format that can be machine readable. Then it will score that based upon how well the ATS system believes that resume fits the requirements that they're looking for. So we'll talk about how they do it. And then it'll filter and rank and say you are 80% there, 70% there, but it'll also rank you based upon other applicants. So even if you have 90% of the qualifications they're looking for, if a certain number of people have 94% or 95%, then you're going to be lower down in the ranking. So the goal here is to get you up as high as possible in this ranking system. Then it will take about top 10 or 20% of the people there, and it'll go to a human being who will then read the resume and decide whether or not to grant you an interview. So the goal here is the people who are buying these ATS systems are the recruiters and the HR hiring people. And they're buying it because they want to reduce their own workload. They want to use AI to do their job for them and to protect them from claims of employment discrimination and the like. But an ATS system doesn't just parse out the resume, it also tracks the applicant, tracks them through the system, assigns interviews scoring, follows up on the interviews, sends out emails, and all that. It is an applicant tracking system, not simply an applicant scoring system. It allows companies then to parse instead of 12 or 15 or 20 job applicants, it can parse hundreds of them. What that means for you is you've got to convince the ATS system that you're the right person for the job. So the first part of the ATS system is extracting data from your resume. In order for the ATS system to extract data from your resume, number one, the data has to be in your resume. But number two, the data in your resume has to be in a way that can be easily parsed out. So things like graphics, tables, text box, logos, things like that cannot be easily read by an ATS system. The simplest ATS, the simplest resume, the cleaner, simplest one, which has blocks of text in a understandable format and in a consistent format, will be the easiest one for the ATS to parse. What's interesting about the ATS system is it does not know what it does not know. So if it is unable to parse data from your resume, it will assume that that data is not there, and it will give you a lower score. So things you want to make sure you have that you're consistent in, and you want to make sure you have your contact information. And Jerry was talking about what contact information to put in. Name, email, a modern email system, Gmail or something like that, rather than Prodigy or CompuServe, right? And then your cell phone. You can put you can, but don't have to put in generic location information, and then a link to your LinkedIn profile. That's it. No, no home addresses, no physical addresses. You don't need that. Work history. Be consistent. Here's who I worked for. Here was my title. Here was my dates of employment. Sometimes not. And here is a description of what I did. And we'll talk about what to put in the description. You want to be consistent. Now, this is one of the problems you have is when you're writing a resume for an ATS system, what you need to do for an ATS system may be different from what you need to do for a human being. So, for example, if you worked for a small company that nobody's ever heard of, but you had an impressive title and job description, you want your title and job description to go first. I was a senior vice president of sales for Butler Supply Company. Impressive title, company I've never heard of. If, on the other hand, you worked for the United States Department of Justice, but your job title was something that's not impressive, you want the employer. Same thing is true if you went to an impressive university but got a non-impressive degree. You want whatever is the impressive part to be first. The problem is when you're working from an ATS system, you need to be consistent. So you can't say, I want my job description first on this one, but I want the employer to be first on the other one. You have to be consistent throughout. So typically it will be employer, title, dates, and descriptions. Then skills. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. One is you're going to put in a summary. And that, I think, is the most important part of the resume, both for an ATS and for a human being. When I'm spending 5 seconds looking at a resume, the first thing I want to know is, who is this person and what do they do? This is like the first line in a movie. You want to catch them with a hook, right? So if you are a project manager, then in your summary, you say experienced project manager or effective project manager or disciplined project manager or successful project manager. I want you to define who you are and what you do right up there in the beginning of the summary. Then you might want to put in a list of skills. These are either technical skills or hard or soft skills that you want to put in there. And then in your description of what you did for your jobs, what you are doing is you're telling a story. The story is, I can solve the problems you've defined in your job description. Remember, in the job description, they've told you what they need. Your job in writing your resume, whether you use AI or not, is to make sure that you are telling them in each of the descriptions of each of the jobs you've had in the past, I am what you are looking for. I will solve the problem that you have. And the good news is they have told you specifically what the problem that they have. So you want to format this so that this data is easy to be extracted. So things like headers, footers, tables, text boxes, weird fonts, anything that makes it creative and the like is not going to be extracted from an ATS system. Now, let me tell you an exception to this rule. If you are applying to a small company for a job that is a creative job, right? Um, as an artist, as a writer, something like that, there, where you're reasonably sure that an ATS system is not looking at your resume, by all means, make your resume creative. That may be what makes it stand out. But for an ATS system, that stuff will not be able to be extracted. So, for example, I was helping write a resume for somebody years ago before ATS became vogue. And for each of the employers that they had, I said, grab the logo of that company and put it next to there. So you can look at the resume and say, oh, look at these logos. This is where they have worked. You don't even have to look at the names of the companies. You just recognize the logos. That will get lost in an ATS system. So this is the most important part of using AI to parse your resume. The AI scoring system will look at both hard and soft skills, education, and the like, and match your resume to what they're looking for, and will score it based on correlation. So the more you correlate with what the job description is and what they're looking for, the higher the score you're going to have. The problem you have is your generic resume was not written for that particular job. So you're going to rewrite your resume for that particular job. So there are a number of things that you're going to do. Let's take away for a minute using AI to help craft your resume. If the job description says we are looking for somebody with 3 to 5 years of program management experience, including certification in A, B, or C, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your resume, both in the summary and the resume itself, says 3 to 5 years of experience in program management, if it's in a particular area, and if they have acronyms in there, like somebody who is experienced in here, it says AML, anti-money laundering. Make sure that every acronym that is in the job description appears in your resume. So if they say, we're looking for somebody who has the following certification, make sure that certification appears in your resume. We'll talk about in a minute about how you do that. If they talk about a particular acronym or like we want somebody who has experience in KYC, AML, RDG, or whatever it is, if you've never heard of those things, look them up and make sure that or some variation of it shows up in your resume. Okay. I agree with Jerry that you are much better off if you can quantify what you did. And that is either because I worked for X company, they were able to do Y, or I saved them this much money, or I made this much money for them, or I managed this number of people, or I worked with this number of projects. So you want to make sure that you quantify whatever you can. Your job title. You had a job title in what you had where you worked before. You can put in more than one job title. So, for example, if there is a job title that you were given, but there's a job title that they are looking for, if they are similar, you can put in the job title for both. So if you were vice president of sales or director of sales, okay, and they're looking for a sales lead, you can put the word sales lead, or vice versa. If you don't make up a job title, you don't make yourself a vice president, you don't make yourself a director, but what you do want to do is make sure that the job title reflects a job title that they are looking for. And then when they talk about skills in the skills section, those will include both hard and soft skills. And I want to talk for a minute about soft skills. A lot of times, the soft skills may be as important or more important than the hard skills. The hard skills will tell you whether you can get the job done. The soft skills will tell them whether or not they want to work with you. So the soft skills will include things like the ability to communicate, anticipating problems, um, uh, being able to develop consensus among people. Those you should not forget those things because that tells them whether or not you're a person they want to work with. So you want to include both hard and soft skills. And then the same thing is true with certifications. If they say they're looking for somebody who is a licensed an LPN and you have a greater certification than that, include your greater certification, but also say, paren, higher certification than LPN. Then LPN will appear in your resume. So things like when they have a required certification, if you have it, make sure you mention that certification. If you don't have it, you can mention things like you are eligible for that certification, you are working towards that certification, or you have a certification that is similar to that certification, as long as that certification appears somewhere in your resume. Okay.
Mark, do
So
you want questions
yeah, you
now
can
or
stop and ask questions, sure.
okay? Because there are a couple. There's several actually. How do you use prompting and AI to help you refine content in your summary?
We'll be there in a second.
Okay. Um, let's see. I use columns on my resume to list my technical and soft skills. Should I just include them as one column?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
you should clean it up. So it doesn't have to be a column necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but it should be a block of easily identifiable and readable text.
And like, would you put, what about bullets or no bullets? How does that do it with the ATS system?
So the bullet points will each be extracted as a separate line. So you want to balance. Remember, every time you do a bullet point, one of the things you're doing, which is great for a paper resume, is you are setting off what it is and highlighting it, but you're also indenting it. So it makes your resume look cleaner and it makes it more readable to a human being. The problem is that each time you indent something, you're losing a lot of space on the left-hand side where you've gone in 5 points and things like that. So you're going to have less data to work with. The ATS system only cares about data, it doesn't care about what it looks like. So you want to achieve a balance between bullet points and text. So
Okay. Mhm.
typically, it's all going to depend on how much information you're trying to get out there. Bullet points is less information and easier to read. Text blocks is more information but more difficult to read. But remember, we have to get past the ATS system, so I limit bullet points in a resume that I'm applying for where it's going to be read by an ATS.
Okay. If I'm out for a while, will the final date kill me?
No. So here's the thing. So there are a couple of things, we'll get to it in just a second, that you can use to explain gaps in your resume. We'll get to that in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
There, let's see. Let's see. My my question is it true that the ATS systems reject an acronym with a forward slash without spaces behind and in front of the slash? So people are questioning about how if they have acronyms and they show up and sometimes they get spit out. So what do you suggest if they have acronyms for their positions or places of work?
Typically, where I have acronyms, I put a semicolon after each acronym. Okay.
Okay.
I
And
just
what
find that to be easiest. But one of the things you can do is you're going to upload your resume to an AI platform for yourself.
mhm.
And we'll talk about that when you're rewriting your resume. When you're asking it to optimize it for an ATS system, you can ask it, will an ATS system be able to read this?
Okay. And that goes, so someone asked, will there be an example of the perfect ATS resume?
There is not, because there is not a perfect ATS resume. But
Okay.
we'll do, okay.
hmm do you
So
recommend only putting 10 to 15 years of experience on your, on your resume?
it
Oh,
depends, okay. And the reason it depends, the question is whether or not you would put only 10 to 15 years. It depends on how repetitive your resume is with the additional. But if you've done something in your early part of your career, which is outstanding and defining, right? You don't want to leave that out simply because it happened a while ago. So if you have some great success or something that is career defining that happened 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you don't want to leave that out. You want to make sure that your resume reflects who you are now, right?
And also reflecting the skill set that you are applying, which
Correct.
the job, yeah.
Right.
Um, how does ATS identify soft skills?
So the job description is going to say we are looking for a team player who is highly organized and an effective communicator. They'll say that. Make sure the words team player, highly organized, and effective communicator appear in your resume, not just once, but throughout your description of what you did at each of your jobs. It looks for soft skills the same way it looks for hard skills. Do you say that you do that? Okay.
Okay. Okay, go back to your presentation. We'll get more questions afterwards.
All right. And then what we'll focus on is how to use AI to help you write and rewrite your resume and prompts and things like that. All right. So this is just a list of some of the ATS systems. The most common one is Workday. 40 to 50% of Fortune 500 companies do it. It integrates completely with the HR system. And again, the most important thing here is to use a clean doc. You want to save your resume either in Word format, which is docx, or in PDF. Either one will work. Do not save your resume in Pages, Google Drive, Google Docs, and the like. Make sure you save it in a format that can be easily parsed. You want to avoid tables. You want to have a skills section. So you'll see that each of these ATS platforms are looking for something slightly different, but you don't know what platform the company is using. So you want to make sure that these pro tips are things that you do for each of the resumes. Okay. So again, your resume will be 1, contact; 2, professional summary; 3, skills or competencies. These are the things that you have accomplished that they're going to be looking for, and then reverse chronological order of your experience, then education. You can combine education, certification, and trainings. Okay, but you want to make sure that you save it in the right format. Use a simple font. Okay, use simple margins. Keep it around 2 pages. Keep the format for dates consistent, and make sure you have strong action verbs. No graphics, no headshots, nothing like that. The other thing is there are ways to convert if you've been like in the government or military to look at your job description or job title and come up with, and ONET is really good for this as well. Figure out the job title that is a commercial job title that is similar to the job that you have. And an AI program will be actually very useful for that. Now, I'm going to go ahead for a second. What to do about gaps? First thing you can do is you can list, instead of saying when you got your job, January 2025, and then you have a gap till December of 2025, and then you start again. Just put the year. I worked there this year. So that means if there's short gaps, less than a year, they won't show up on the resume. Even if there's a gap for more than a year, it just says you worked in 2024, then you worked in 2025. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you can actually put stuff in that explains the gap. Okay, that's like what LinkedIn does, caregiving. That. The other thing you can do is if during that time, during the gap, you were performing some services for people, then you can say that you were working as a consultant. All right. And then you can also address these things in cover letters as well. So those are things that you can do. If you don't have certain skills or certifications, there are certain things that you can do to get those certifications quickly. All right, in like a week or so, some of them, like Google, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning have things that give you certification, but you can also show experience that is the same. So you can, but make sure you put the certifications into the letter and cover letter. Okay. All right, I'm going to talk about use of AI.
Now, Mark, there was someone asked, let's see, someone had mentioned that they thought that Jerry had previously said the opposite about mentioning soft skills.
No, she didn't. I was
Okay.
listening to Jerry. She did not say do not mention soft skills. What
Uh-huh.
you want to do is you want to weave the soft skills into your experiences. All right. So when you are talking, you definitely want to have hard, quantifiable metrics in your resume. But your resume doesn't just say, I did this. Your resume also says, who am I? And so what you're doing is this is a resume is a two-page autobiography. It is telling the story of who you are and what kind of person you are and why you're going to be a great employee. And what you're doing is through what I call theme and variation. In each job you've had, you want to reinforce those skills, hard and soft. Okay. So, for example, if you led a team of 10 people and accomplished the following, you can say, led a team of 10 people in sales, increased the sales by 15% over previous years through collaboration, teamwork, team building, whatever it is. Put those words in, then they're talking about what you did and how you did it. Hard skills and soft skills, both in the same thing.
Okay. Does all of this emphasize how important it is to use personal network for applying for jobs and only apply for jobs where you know someone on the inside who can help you? We always say the 50 and better population get their jobs. Network, network, network.
Right. So
Yeah.
I don't say that you should only apply for jobs when you know someone. But I do say that if you're going to apply for jobs where you don't know somebody, find a way to know somebody there. And that is by making connections to other people.
And using
But that
LinkedIn.
doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply for a job. If you find a job that's perfect for you, but you don't know anybody there, well, you say, this is my dream job, this is where I want to work. Develop a strategy for applying for that job, which includes both crafting the perfect resume, crafting the perfect cover letter, doing the appropriate following up, as well as trying to network. All of those things are important.
Okay. Can you suggest a generic AI prompt for it to act as a recruiter and analyze my resume against the job description?
The most generic prompt is exactly that. And it's right here. Here's my background. Here's the job I am applying for. Rewrite my resume for this job. And the AI program will use billions of calculations and everything to craft a really bad resume for that job because that is too generic a prompt. But it is the prompt you're going to start with. So what you'll do is you will upload your resume to any of the AI platforms. We'll talk about ChatGPT. Okay. You can click on a button and it'll allow you to upload your resume. Then you upload the job description. So here's your resume. Here's the job description. You upload it and you say, rewrite my resume for that job description. Now, the good news about it is it will tailor that resume to that job description. The bad news is it may make stuff up. It may give you skills or qualifications or backgrounds or experiences that you don't actually have. It may or may not, so it may hallucinate. It may take out stuff that you think is important and the like. But that is the most basic prompt. Here's my background. Here's the job description. Rewrite it for this. But there are a whole bunch of different things that you want to do. Okay. So for example, the second one is you upload the job description and you say, what are the top 20 keywords from this job posting that I should include in my resume? Which do I already have? What am I missing? So you ask it to perform a gap analysis. What are the things that this job is looking for hard skills and soft skills that I don't have in my resume. If you were an ATS system, how would you score my resume for this job? That's another one you can say. What are the missing skills? How do I show these skills? How do I show these skills in each of the jobs I have? The job description is asking for this. I don't have that. What's a strategy that I can deploy to show that I'm qualified? Rewrite my resume so it's more active voice rather than passive voice. What are some accomplishments that I can highlight in my resume? This job description is asking for this. I have that. How do I show these are similar? Okay. Rewrite my bullet points to be more impactful. Demonstrate, let's say, show accomplishments. The AI program can be used to show these accomplishments. Rewrite these bullet points as a narrative description. Rewrite this narrative description as bullet points. Make this resume from 5 pages down to 2 pages without losing any detail. Good luck with that. But it'll take an effort at that. All right. Here's number 6. Score my resume against this job posting on a scale of 1 to 100 for ATS compatibility. Tell me what would improve the score. And that will look at things like graphics, white space, descriptions and stuff. And it'll say, your resume is not being easily parsed. This is the things you should do to do it. So you can say, optimize this resume for an ATS system, optimize this resume for this job, optimize each. Okay, so you can also say the job application is really looking for somebody who is an effective communicator. That's the thing that when I read the job description, that was the thing that struck me about it. Rewrite my resume, emphasizing how I was an effective communicator in each of the jobs I've had for the last 15 years. And it will rewrite it that way. Then you can keep rescoring it each time after you make a change. Or you can say, the job description is asking for the following certification, which I don't have. What is the best way for me to demonstrate that I'm qualified for the position and defeat an ATS tracking system without making stuff up? So you don't use ChatGPT, Claude, or any of these systems to write your resume. What you are doing is you're reshaping your resume based upon suggestions made by these AI programs. So these are various different prompts you can use to make your resume stand out to an ATS system. The problem is you have to look out and make sure that, one, it doesn't make stuff up, and number 2, it doesn't appear to have been written by AI. So one of the things you want to do when you're done with your resume and have scored it that way is you want to say, make sure that this resume does not appear to have been written by an AI program. There are certain things that AI programs do that are dead giveaways that they were written by AI. And increasingly, employers are looking for highlights that show that the resume was written by AI. And I'll give you some examples. When you were in 5th grade and taking English in 5th grade, you were told how to write an essay. How do you write an essay? 1, you begin with a topic sentence. Topic sentence might be something like, Abraham Lincoln was one of the truly great presidents of all time, period. Okay, then you go into subject matter. He was born in a rough-hewn log cabin near Hogansville, Kentucky on February 11th, 1809. And then you say accomplishments. So if you look at the way you were taught to write an essay, there was a topic sentence, then factual summary, then at the end, a conclusion. AI programs are trained the same way, and they will write exactly like that. Humans don't write like that. Humans might write completely differently, more free-flowing, more fluent. So you will get a perfectly competent essay from an AI program, but you will get one that looks like it was written to be a perfectly competent essay. At the end of the day, you can say things to an AI program which say, rewrite my resume to emphasize my friendliness, rewrite my resume to emphasize my organizational skills, rewrite my resume to emphasize, whatever you want to do. Same thing with a cover letter. When you write a cover letter, you will write a cover letter. Okay. You're going to write most cover letters, when you ask an AI program to write a cover letter to this job, will do one thing. It will say, as the attached resume shows, I have more than 20 years experience doing this kind of job. That cover letter says nothing about you and adds nothing to your resume. It basically says, oh, read the resume. This is what you'll find. So when you're writing a cover letter, and it will always say, an AI generated cover letter will always say the same thing. I am happy to be applying for the job of boom. As the attached cover letter says, I have done this for years. I look forward to hearing from you. Please, if you have any questions, ask me. That's the cover letter you would have written if you didn't have an AI program to help you write it. You want to take that and you want to say, write a cover letter that is warm and personal and addresses the specific things I've done that make me the best candidate. Emphasize my ability to work with others, my team player ability, and the fact that I take my job seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. Okay. Include a couple of anecdotes about things I did, stories about how I solved the problem back with this company, including the fact that you put in. Now you've got a cover letter that is different from everybody else's, and it will not look like one that's written by an AI program. So, one of the things you can do.
Mark, just a heads up, you have like 2-3 more minutes. So
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
and then I'll try to give a couple questions, and then
There are a bunch of prompts that you can put in. Like one is, this is a government resume. Rewrite this for the private sector. Or I have a 2-year gap. How should I address this? Or this requires a certification that I don't have, but I do this. Okay. So those are different prompts that you can put in that will help score your resume. Right. You want your resume to be tailored to each job posting. You want your LinkedIn profile to match your resume, and you want to help write a short cover letter that is warm and friendly and addresses these issues. All right. And then there are ways you can get certifications if you don't have them. There are free certifications. Resume tools use chat. The two I recommend are ChatGPT and Claude by Anthropic. Those are the two easiest ones to work with. All right. So, any questions?
yeah, I'm going to give you a couple of questions, and then Mark, would you be able to jump into chat to answer any unanswered
Sure.
questions? Okay, great.
Sure.
So do not worry, guys. Okay, so let me just get to where we are. Okay.
Just go ahead and play with ChatGPT. Upload your resume, upload some job descriptions, and just play with it. You're crafting something. So it's going to take 10 to 15 different chats per resume to get it to where you want it to be.
Here's someone asked, do you need to switch a previous government title with a similar replacement title?
If you are applying for okay. So the first thing is, if the title you had no longer exists in the government, okay, put both titles in. So if you were whatever it is, and now that's called something else, put both of them in. Like, for example, I work for a company, ABC company, which has been acquired 3 times and is now Versant or Vertigo or whatever. So I say I work for ABC company, currently Vertigo. But the same thing with a job description. If you have a job description that is now changed to a different job description, put that in.
Similarly, if you are a federal employee and and now you're a displaced federal worker and are looking for jobs in the private sector and trying to figure out how does that translate into the private sector, AI can be a very good tool for
You
that.
can say, this is my job title. Well, first of all, ONET can help you, but also you can say, here's my job title. What is a comparable private sector job title for that?
Excellent. Someone asked, I understand there is a lawsuit against Workday alleging that its AI-powered hiring tools discriminate against applicants 40 plus years old. Given that so many companies use Workday for recruiting, would you have any advice for how to beat Workday's built-in ageism?
The best way is to have the best skills and qualifications for the job. Okay. I mean, you don't know what hidden biases are in the AI programs. Um, one of the things you can do is when you're recrafting your resume, you can say, craft a resume to eliminate anything which could trigger a hidden bias based on age.
If you're using caregiving to explain a gap, how much detail do you include on the resume?
It depends. So, if you have a story that you want to tell, that you were a caregiver for an elderly parent or whatever, what would you want to know if you were hiring somebody? You look at the gap and you say, 2 year gap. Why were you not working for 2 years? And so you can actually use the caregiving function or the gap as a positive because you say, this is what I was doing. This demonstrates my commitment to other people, my willingness to sacrifice, whatever else it is. Okay. So you can actually use it as a positive.
And you can input and discuss and put the skill set that you garnered during that time frame.
That's
So
good too.
if
Also,
you
you're
were
going to, right, you're going to
right,
develop all kinds of organizational, like taking care of somebody else is a full-time job. So
right,
there are a whole bunch of skills that you acquire from doing that.
exactly, and all very valuable to a prospective employer. Um, if we are as we are creating resumes for several job applications, is it better to start with a document resume that it is simply a Word document that contains all of our experience and upload and ask for AI to create a new one?
Uh, yeah, I mean, one of the things you might want to start with is start with the long resume, the 6 page resume, and then it'll parse it down if you have one. But if you've already created a resume that you're relatively comfortable with, use that. Okay. So it's less tailoring that you have to do.
This is a question, and this will be the last one. Again, then Mark will jump into chat. If we use ChatGPT for a lot of customization of the resume, will the recruiter reject the resume as they can identify it was written by AI and not you?
Possibly. So the last thing you want to do when you finish writing your resume is say, does are there any indications in this resume that it was crafted through an AI program? And if so, remove them. So you can do things like vary sentence length, and you can tell it to in your personalization of AI, you can actually tell it what kind of tone to write the programs in. Like I have in mind, it says, I'm a lawyer, use legal terms, use blue book format citations, you be detail oriented and analytical, right? You can also tell it vary sentence lengths. You can tell it how to avoid the traps of making it look AI written.
And you want to make sure it's in your own voice. So someone suggested train AI, upload a few essays you've written, and talk to AI. It will get to know you and your tone.
So one of these Jody mentioned is that I've written over 2,000 articles. So what I did is I took those 2,000 articles, put them into AI, and then it now writes closer to my voice. The other thing I do is when I'm writing an article, I will say, that's a good article, make it 20% more sarcastic. And that gets my voice.
And final question, because people are always asking about cover letters. Is cover letter necessary? Does HR read cover letters?
If they're asking for and giving you an opportunity to write a cover letter, write a cover letter. First of all, it's not that hard to do. Second of all, the cover letter is where you can shine. The cover letter, there are cases where a good cover letter will get you the job. The cover letter is literally your first interview. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm going to tell you where to jump in.